This is Modern Mindset, the show that picks the brains of the world's leading minds to help you unlock yours. I'm your host, Adam Cox, and joining me today is Judith Buckland from family law solicitors Woolley Co. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning indeed. So you've done some research investigating the kind of words that tend to come up when people search for things like divorce, and it's things like sadness, blame, battle, all these kind of fairly negative connotations and things like that. Do you think that gives us an insight in terms of what's happening inside people's minds at the point where they're either consider a divorce or are going through a divorce?
I mean, yes, I do. I absolutely agree with the research that's been done. And those are words that I hear. Well, I say I hear words. I pick it up from my own clients. It is a very, very difficult time for everybody. And I think the current legislation, the current way that divorce is dealt with, doesn't really help with that because it's very sort of blame orientated.
So the current rules, as I understand them, mean that there's about 5 different credible reasons why divorce can be instigated. And that's changing in April to a no-fault divorce. So can you give us a bit of a snapshot as to how things currently are and what they might be looking more like, in a few months' time?
Right. Well, I mean, the actual grounds for divorce is not going to change because the only ground for divorce is the irretrievable breakdown of the marriage. But at the moment, we've got a system whereby you have to evidence that by one of, as you say, 5 facts, 3 of which are to do with periods of separation, but 2 of which are fault-based. So you have to either evidence your breakdown of your marriage by the fact of your partner's unreasonable behaviour or the fact of your partner's adultery. As I say, the other 3 are to do with separation. And that is difficult, as you can imagine, because it's a blame game. It means that somebody, there's a concept of fault within that procedure, which does not help, as you can imagine, in trying to sort out other things. As from April of this year, that is going to go. So you will still have to show that your marriage is irretrievably broken down, but you do so simply by filing a very short statement saying exactly that: my marriage is broken down. So there is no blame, there is no fault, and it can be done jointly, actually, as from April, so that both of you can decide this is what we want to do. We just file a joint statement, and that is it. That is all that will be required. So it's going to be a big change.
A lot of people may recall Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin's controversial, at the time, statement of conscious uncoupling, this idea of they were in a relationship and they figured out it wasn't the right relationship anymore. So they both decided to move on and kind of be apart. And at the time, that was kind of ridiculed. Do you think we're moving in that kind of direction where actually people don't look at, marriages as kind of like this lifelong commitment, but more towards this kind of period of, well, the intention is to have a good relationship, but if it can't work out, well then, both parties agree to separate and they just go their separate ways.
I don't think people enter into marriage with that sort of concept or that sort of idea. I think, at the beginning of marriage, people think it's forever. I think there's no doubt about that. But when things do go wrong, ideally, absolutely, I would say, if we can work together with the couple to try and uncouple or, resolve the difficulties that inevitably will arise, or the practical difficulties, which in the main are, well, completely actually, are arrangements for children. So co-parenting, I mean, Gwyneth Paltrow have done that fairly well from the point of view of being very much there and present and working together for their children. That's always got to be something that has to be a priority. And also the inevitable sorting out of the financial situation that has to follow on any divorce. So yes, if we can remove the acrimony and the hurt, well, not the hurt so much, but minimize the hurt with this new procedure whereby you almost start at the moment by the blame game, and it doesn't help, as you can imagine. So if we can remove that and concentrate more on resolving the practical issues, the financial issues, and most importantly, how to co-parent, then all to be welcome from my point of view.
Yeah. So you're expecting this to lead to, let's say, more healthy separations, divorces that are kind of not so acrimonious. Do you think that will increase the divorce rates if it's an easier, less stressful thing for people to do?
No, I don't think it will. I mean, I know that's not necessarily a universally held view, but I don't think it will, because the difficult part of the divorce is not the actual administrative exercise to bring your marriage to an end. The difficulty is emotional and trying to sort out those difficulties. And people are going to be, I was going to say, reluctant to do that. They're going to work hard in their relationship to try and avoid that. So when we have people coming to us talking about divorce, it's not something that they've decided on overnight. It's something they've wrestled with for months, sometimes years. And the most difficult thing is sometimes to grasp the nettle and say, okay, this is what we want to do. So the fact that the procedure is going to become somewhat easier, and easier emotionally, I would say, as opposed to necessarily easier legally, I don't think is going to suddenly lead to a rush of divorces. I don't think people are suddenly going to say, oh gosh, this is all terribly easy, let's just get on with this now, because they've still got to sort out those difficulties that I alluded to earlier, the children's situation and the finance situation, irrespective of what procedure they have to go through in order to get their divorce.
So the idea of no-fault divorces sounds like, it's the ideal choice for those people that are in relationships. The relationships aren't working anymore, or they're in a marriage, the relationship isn't working anymore, and they decide, okay, well, let's kind of separate at this point. How about those that are in maybe a bit more toxic relationships, or those that are the victims of domestic abuse? Is a no-fault divorce still the ideal choice there, or should they be looking at some of the other terms?
No, I think that's an example of where it will be very helpful, because if you've got somebody in a toxic relationship or who is being subjected to domestic abuse, one of the most common problems in that scenario is control from the other party. And at the moment, they have the ability to either delay or indeed completely hold up the divorce. There are all sorts of things that a party who does not want to get divorced can do. I mean, ultimately, it's unlikely to succeed, but goodness, they can make life an awful lot easier. And that's, one of the biggest difficulties in an abusive relationship, is that element of coercion and control. Now, with this new divorce procedure, you do not need anybody to cooperate. There's going to be no basis for contesting a divorce. It basically is saying to the court, I would like a divorce, please. And it will happen. So at the moment, we've got the procedural process whereby somebody can contest it, can defend it, can say, well, actually, no, the marriage hasn't irretrievably broken down. And even if it has, it's not as a result of my behavior or my adultery, or no, we haven't been separated for 2 years because actually we spent 2 weeks together doing this, that, and the other. So there's at the moment, there's the ability to do that. That goes at a stroke in April of this year. And so I think people who are in that sort of relationship are going to find it easier, less stressful, and more, they're going to be more capable of doing it. They're going to have the strength to do it, as opposed to knowing that they could face a really difficult and unpleasant time from their partner.
I mean, obviously, look, a divorce is seen as one of the most stressful kind of life events, but also financially quite devastating. Do you think this would, on the basis that there is less, contention and kind of back and forth, would that make the process of divorce less financially impactful as well?
Financially impactful from the point of view of resolving the financial difficulties between the party, or do you mean financially practical?
I was thinking more of legal fees, because I guess if there is like less kind of back and forth, does that mean the whole process is kind of quicker and therefore not so financially expensive?
I don't think it's going to be quicker, and the reason it's not going to be quicker is because, and this is a big change, is that from the new procedure, once you notify the court that you want to start divorce proceedings, it immediately starts a 20-week period running where nobody can do anything. There is a 20-week waiting period before you can then proceed with your divorce. And that's something that's very different from now. So in some ways, it could take longer because you file your papers with the court 20 weeks later, which is 5 months, you can then proceed, which is not the case at the moment. You can do it more quickly, I would say. From the point of view of less complexity and therefore possibly a cheaper process, yes. And I think it is also going to make it more accessible for people to deal with themselves. At the moment, they are very often will come to lawyers and say, well, can you just deal with our divorce? We don't really know how to do it, which of course we do. But I think the new procedure is going to make it more straightforward. It's much more online. It's one thing that COVID has kind of brought us to, is much more online divorce, much more online court proceedings. And so I think from that point of view, it is going to be more straightforward. More people are going to do it themselves, and it's probably going to be somewhat cheaper because it's less complex. But I suppose the difference with, or the other thing to appreciate is that the difficult and therefore expensive stuff to sort out is any issues, or are any issues with regard to children and finances. And that's not going to change. That's still going to be difficult to do, and you're still going to probably need lawyers on board to do that. That can cause delay, that can cause expense, and that's still going to be there. But with the new divorce procedure, I suppose it at least clears the decks to allow people to concentrate on that, to get away from this kind of reclamation, blame, hurt. It's going to, I suppose, concentrate people's minds on sorting out those practical issues. And that's one of the reasons why this 20-week period has been brought in the hope that you're able to sort out those problems and come to some sort of resolution before you finalise your divorce.
That makes sense. And what kind of things do you think people are going to be going to Woolley Co for help with as a result of this?
The same as they always have. I mean, people come to us with difficulties. Obviously, they're thinking about divorce. They want to start a divorce. They want to often get an idea of what it might mean. I think that's a lot of people come to us without really having an idea of divorce in the first instance. But they will say to us, this is my situation. The writing may well be on the wall that we are going to separate. And my biggest concern is what is going to happen to me financially? Can I manage? What is going to happen to my children? Is there issues there? That's very often our starting point, our starting conversation. Of course, there are people who come to us and say, right, I want to start divorce and I want to do it today, please. And off we go. But as I would say, the majority of people are sounding us out and trying to get some information before they make those momentous decisions.
Makes sense. And where's the best place for people to go for more information on this?
Well, there's a lot of information out there, as you can imagine. It's a kind of hot potato this at the moment, and there's been a lot in the press. But as far as websites are concerned, you can't really do much better than Woolley Co. Actually, I have to say we've done a lot of research on this. We've done a lot of preparation for this to make sure that we're on board and fully across it. And so we have got quite a lot of information on our website, just sort of general information for the public to have a look at. There's blogs, there's information there. And they can obviously talk to us about that. We're very happy to talk to them about it. But there is, as I say, a lot of information out there. If you, a Google search to just look at new divorce procedure as from April will throw up a lot of information.
Fantastic. Judith Buckland there from Family Law Solicitors Woolley Co. Thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And to you at home, thanks for joining me on Modern Mindset in association with Share Radio. See you again soon for more.